Hello and welcome to this webinar from AXcademy about the top 7 new features for 2023 Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management Release Wave 2. That was quite a welcome on that. Good to see you all. Thank you very much for joining. And as I can see going on in the chat right now, a little bit of whereabout what you'll be in the world. Some of you quite early. It would be in Copenhagen, in Denmark, in Europe, where I am right now. It is sunny in the afternoon, 4 o'clock. Now, I've been really busy since the holiday season, and due to my bad planning, sorry, Andreas is not really to join today. So I think I will just take him out of the presentation, that is, and then it's just going to be me who's going to be around. My name is Finn from AXcademy. I'm our training lead, and I'm pleased to present to you a lot of things today. In the webinar promise, it was about the Release Wave 2, 2023 Release Wave 2, which came out for us in Europe, at least during the holiday season, late July, I think it was. So we placed this webinar at the earliest possible we could in the after the holiday season for us, at least. So that I think would be now. So let's see what's in here. This is for supply chain management. We have later on in this month, we have one about finance as well. And of course, some of the things they do kind of overlap. That some of the things which I'm going to tell you today is financial, and some of the things we're going to do in finance later on this month is a bit about supply chain. But as usual, the stuff covers for what's going to happen for the next half year. If everything goes as planned, it doesn't always do. And the last time when Andreas and I did the supply chain management release wave 1 for 2023, there was some really exciting news which are not yet available in here. But let's just look forward. We look forward to what's going to be in here with the various improvements that Microsoft is presenting on that. Now, the original promise for this webinar, as you've seen in the invitation, was the top 7 new features in this release wave in here. That was it, and also promised a bit of Q and perhaps A at the end of this session. However, working into the details of the release wave, I changed my mind. So this is what it's going to be. Instead of the top 7 features, it's going to be twisted into 7 areas, and there's going to be more features, and of course, there's going to be more talk, and hopefully you can live with the details. There's really a lot of things I'd like to tell you. This time around, I think there are fewer really big things, but there's a lot of nice little features over here, and that shows sometimes Microsoft focus or investment, as they call it in the release wave, where they put the money, right? It's investment, where they put the effort, sometimes to make things easier instead of just having some big features which looks really good on paper, maybe not. It's useful in everyday life. I think this time around, there's a lot of useful, smaller things that we would normally see. So I have not focused on 7 features. I have focused on not 7 features, but quite a few more. So let's know in the chat what you think about that once we're through that. But I have grouped it into 7 areas, and then some of these areas, they would have only 1 feature, and some of these areas, they would have, I think, 8 or so out of the ones being available. I did try to limit myself, but this time it was a little bit difficult because I didn't find those really big things that I wanted to share with you, but rather a lot of nice little things. Copilot innovation. Copilot is one of the buzzwords right now by Microsoft, and I'd like to show just one thing which is coming in here. For inventory and logistics, there's got to be quite a few things. Manufacturing, asset management, there's a couple of things in here. For planning, for procurement, and for product information management, the 3 Ps in there. There's only one thing with each of those ones, and hardly a thing worth mentioning in too much of that. But I guess some of these ones, especially product information management, has this really big global thing hanging in the air right now. So that one hopefully will be in general availability. Right now it's in public preview. And then finally, the warehouse management, which also has a lot of things to it. So today's biggest topic areas, that is in inventory and logistics and in warehouse management. And that is both from the number of features and also for our think at least, the value of the features in here. We should still, even though I have a lot of things to show, we should still have an opportunity to questions and hopefully some answers as well, depending on what it is. Remember, this is all in release wave. This is release wave, even though some of these ones are in public preview, it's not yet general available. Some of those ones we don't know when it's actually going to be, but it's in release wave, so we could share our thoughts about that. As for the first topic area, the co-pilot innovation in this is where we have, and I have chosen this time around to show some of the, in the release wave, where the interesting thing is always the last part, I think, in here, with AI-based contextual help, the users are empowered to rapidly unlock the full potential. I'm looking forward to that, but in the meantime, let's have a look at what they promised in here. So please expect for each of these topic areas, there'll be sort of this Microsoft jazz in the beginning, and then perhaps some of the things which really mean something. What's going to happen in there? It's going to be some AI-based contextual help. So what happens in this, in the procure process, at least in the procure purchase process, I would say, pay is more the financial thing, right? In this process, the co-pilot will try to help. I'm really looking forward to see what's going to happen. Public preview is going to be January 2024, so it's just around the corner for some of us at least. But what Microsoft says in this, it is trying to help people. It's trying to help the purchasing agents, whatever, to get automated, to get helps in here. So when something is changed, maybe from the supplier, that the system can help it. What does that really mean? For me, instead we would have to think when we change things, when we update the expected receipt date or whatever, with all those cascades of things that will happen in our planning, master planning, production, and other things too, and affect on our customers as well, the system will try to help. That's at least what I think is behind this. So instead of handling this manually, and when you handle things manually, at least when I do things manually, a lot of things could happen that I didn't really want to, because there's so many things connected in the system that I cannot really cope with all the things that happens in here. So now I think there's kind of a decision helping tree or co-pilot in here, which will then tell me up front, or when I try to do things, and warn me what's actually going to happen here. So with these many signals, as it says on the screen, with these many signals taken from the release wave, of course, with these many signals, it's really easy to overlook, underestimate what happens with the things in here. So you do some suboptimal decisions. We all do, but why not get the help that we can? And that's what I think that the co-pilot is going to do. I'm really looking forward to see what will happen with this conversational experience. We could use that when we do filtering and Power BIs and other things too. We could speak sort of natural language with that, but now applied in procurement process, which is to a lot of companies is really, really tricky thing, and lots of details, a lot of effects with this. This, I think, sounds nice. So it's going to be in the details. We'll still have to see about that. But the conversational thing, natural language, and so on, I really think sounds like a good idea. So if you get, and some of this we'll see later on, if you get a message from the supplier about the change the ship date from the supplier or change receipt date, which is kind of flip side of the coin, what will then happen if you change the things on the purchase order update? What happens downstream with all the various things that's going to happen if you buy raw materials or whatever it would be? Looking forward to that. I really like automations. I really like kind of hands-on warnings and other things to me when things happen in this system. So the Copilot is in general a nice thing applied to the procurement to purchase to me. I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen with that. Now, this was kind of the level it's going to be today, the level of the various in here, and speeding through like this, hopefully making you curious about these new features. And if you are, or you're going to be, of course, head for the release wave to read about that. The release wave this time around is fairly big, 1,500, 2,000 pages if you convert it to a PDF file. Of course, some of these ones are about other products, but for supply chain management, there was quite a few in here. 200 for the F&O apps, I think it was, and then quite a substantial number of pages, descriptive kind of things, like I'm doing right now. Some more things going on in this, being with the inventory and logistics. That's one of the two big topic areas that I have to share with you today. So again, quickly browsing through the Microsoft Jazz from the release wave, and it's more visibility, efficiency, resiliency. Resiliency, I think, came around, especially when we had this container ship blocking the Suez Canal and the supply chains were disrupted, and everybody had to do some new things. The resiliency is then kind of making your system more agile is another buzzword of that, but you're able to sort out quickly where to get your supply from. That's at least something for me in this understanding, but let's see what there is new features in the release wave in here. One is evaluate discrete manufacturing costs using standard costs. Maybe some of you have heard about this before because we had that the last time around, Andreas and I, when we did supply chain management, and I had it when I did finance, because this is kind of in both tracks, isn't it? It's a financial thing about all the costings, but the way we get it is from manufacturing with all the direct labor and other things too. So if you think you've seen this before, you're right. But it's now coming with all those global things, which we'll get back to later on. A price management workspace coming up. Prices is always tricky. So if you want to handle something on the spot, you see what happens. You need all the help that you can get, and that's where we have this pricing management workspace. I'm a big fan of workspaces. I know I don't share that feeling with each and everybody, but from an end user perspective, I really like the idea about workspaces. So I push it all the time and push this just a little bit today. But this is overview, right? So no hands-on. It's not available for showing anyway right now. Sell and price multiple items as a bundle, bundling, kitting, different tools that we've had. Now another way of doing that. The mobile app being changed to Power Apps has been, will be. There's a new mobile app coming up to view and manage the inventory. So a lot of things about the Power App. Actually, today we have a class running, or two-day class running with Power Apps, a Power Platform, and Dynamics 365. Such a big area, such a useful area to work with that. Microsoft building the mobile apps in Power Apps these days. And that leads kind of naturally to the things about dual write. And you know, dual write we use when we integrate with the dark side, with the Dynamics 365 sales or project operations part 1 or 2 or whatever it would be. And we could start on the sales side, not in finance operations, but in Dynamics 365 sales. We could start with some prospects, and then later on, we would like to have those prospects turned into customers in our Dynamics 365 finance operations. So we could do all the usual warehousing things and maybe even do manufacturing and so on. So now there's some additional functionality with this to enable prospects in the prospect to cash, similar to what we just had about the procure to pay, prospect to cash standard functionality with dual write. And there's more about dual write later on. I know writing on their side and our side in finance operations, and this is just an additional feature in there. Compound charges, quotations and sales, right? Things going out. There's a lot of things about charges in Dynamics 365, and there's some pain around the charges, even if we have landed cost module and so on. There's some about charges on the incoming goods side, and we got our share of trouble with quotations and sales orders. Now there's some, I really think, tremendous functionality coming around in here with the compound charges. You base charges on charges, including or excluding or taxes, and actually also accumulate. Well, getting ahead of myself, come back to that later on. We got things about still sort of holds. That's the functionality I really liked from when it came around. It's not perfect, not much new functionality. It is, but I really like the idea that you could set up some conditions, even when we do financial stuff, that it could be based on credit limit holds and other things too. And with those 5 plus 2, or how many we got these days, we could do a lot of different reasons for hold. Now there's a lot more being added, and I was so thrilled to see agility being used once again. Just yesterday, we were doing a class for graduates, and yesterday too. Well, we've been doing that for a month, so we precise. But yesterday we did things about product and implementations and other things. So we talked about agile projects as well. It's a long time since I've seen agility mentioned in release waves, I think, at least. So it's good to see it's coming back. That's been one of the hot words for quite some time. So increase sales order agility with some new functionality, and that's the main thing about sales order holds now with classes and advanced holds. So you could do, as you'll see, depending on domestic or international or whatever you would have, we do different things in here. So much more functionality being added. And I think that's a typical example of what happens with this release wave. There's a lot of existing functionality that is just being upped in functionality. Just, well, a little bit or quite a lot. For this one, I think it's actually quite a lot. Finding products and on-hand information by attributes. We just saw this as that was just a small thing, really. But I don't really think, having second thoughts about that, I really don't think it's that bad. Let's see when we get to it. So this was 8 different features in here. And normally, Andreas and I would have focused on just a few. But I thought, hey, there's no really biggies in here, so why not have a look on these ones, see how many nice things is actually in here. So let me just go through the ones in here in just a little bit, as usual, basically quoting from Microsoft and then adding a little bit of my own stuff in here. Now, these things about the manufacturing cost, this is all due to a lot of different accounting principles around the world. And sometimes when you have to do statutory reporting to the authorities, you will have to go by one set of rules. And perhaps in your Dynamics 365, you really like to behave differently. Standard cost is one of the things where there's always some discussion about that. And actually this I discussed with myself and with Andreas on the supply chain management last time around, what this would actually benefit from. So I'm not going to do too much with this. If you want to see that discussion, you can find that old webinar from 6 months ago on our website and see a little bit of our talks we had at that time. But now it's sort of put up again with the global inventory accounting add-in that you could now still do the internal accounting in one way, and then you can add multiple ledgers. That's the first time in Dynamics 365 Finance Operations we could add multiple ledgers. Before that, we always had this one-to-one, one legal entity, one ledger, and now at least for the accounting on the manufacturing and so on, we could add multiple ledgers. So there are some functionality included, and there'll be more functionality. I just wanted to point that out in here. And then I've got a couple of other things which I'll just browse very quickly through. These are a couple of the slides that I actually used the last time around, and also showed them kind of nice and easy and animated. I just want to bring them to your attention. It's part of some prior webinars that we had, where we had some more discussions, and in this you could see this with the multiple costing ledgers as well. Okay, managed pricing with this workspace thing in here coming around. really soon on that. And public preview, and I know sometimes when it's in public preview, some would find, including myself, things which we think could be better or whatever, and it takes a while from the planned preview to, or the public preview to the general availability on that, which I think is a good thing, because then it means it has been improved. But right now, at least, it seems like it's coming out really soon. And as always, as mentioned in general, I really like the idea about workspaces, because then we could put everything in one place, and the less places the users have to go, the more inclined they are to use the functionality on the screen on that. So why not add everything? One of my favorite examples from finance is the customer credit and collection workspace, which is one that really puts everything together. And then for some of the other ones about purchase orders, and in this case about pricing management on the sales, we're going to have a lot of functionality in here. So you could do some changes. You could see things about the pricing policies and other things in this workspace coming around. So it is not, I guess, the biggest of things, but I really like the idea that you could manage these various things in here. We got this policy soon to be expired, whatever's going to happen with that, and then go through what that would mean for a customer's prices on which items in here. So not huge, but useful, right? Doing it myself once in a while, selling at the wrong price. If you sell things too cheap, that was too bad. If you sell it too expensive or try to, I'm sure the customer would inform you. So this will help you towards doing things more correctly and in one place in this workspace coming soon. Sell and price multiple items as a bundle, kitting and stuff, and this is real soon. So what you could do in this is that you could have a primary item, and then you could add some items to this as a bundle. So when you do the selling, when you do the invoicing and so on, the sales order confirmation, it will be to the customer. It would just be one. And then when you do the picking, the packing, and so on, it will be those individual items that you have, the parent item, as it's called at the top. And then you will have all the various ones in here as well, the additional component items, as it's called. Simple thing this is, and then one note, and I put it in red because I thought that was worth to note. Because much to my surprise, Microsoft discontinued, took away the feature of review recognition on that. I remember the many years being at Microsoft conferences where the hot topic was always about when do we have review recognition? And then finally it came around, and it was great, I think. Now it's gone again. And now some of the features of review recognition is, of course, available with the subscription, but some features are not there yet. This is one of those coming around now to replace some of the things that disappeared with the review recognition. Got to talk a bit more about that, the review recognition and the tools replacing it when we get to the finance one at the end of the finance webinar for the ReSwave 2, when we get to the end of this month. Mobile app, new mobile app, not going to do much about this. It's soon out there, and it better be, because a lot of these apps that we actually had were kind of gone missing when we had the convert from the I was just reading a little bit of feedback about the audio quality is not so good this time, perhaps due to the earbuds. Yes, it definitely could be. Let me just see if I can change a little bit. So thank you for a heads up on that. Let's just see if I just fiddled a little bit with the audio controls for here. So sorry about that if there's something wrong with quality. Back to the mobile app. I'm not using mobile phone for the voice. I'm not using my earbuds, and that could be the reason. So I just fiddle a little bit. Please let me know if it's okay. At least one of you guys can hear me good. That's good to know. Then at least that saved my day for that. I'm really sorry if some of them have trouble with the audio. I tested it before we started, but that's not always a thing that matters when you get real live. So I just have to continue. I fiddled what I could with the audio. I just have to move on. And of course, you could be comment about my voice. I really have a cold. Had that for a week, so that's not on top. The topic is, of course, Dynamics 365, right? And the release wave for 2023 and release wave 2, that is. The mobile app, brilliant thing, always thought so, always going to think so. With the mobile apps, and we got so many things that we could do. So with the new one, we could do even more than with the old one, and with the new ones using Power App functionality, more secure, more flexible, more adaptable, and other things too. No, I'm not a sales guy, but I really think it's good. So in this mobile app, there's a couple of new things being available, but otherwise, the mobile app is what you can do with that. But now more possibilities to have a look across inventories easily across ones. And there's more coming up about making it easier on the floors, being a shop floor, being a warehouse floor, and other things too, because that seems to have been a fairly big thing from Microsoft this time around. Smaller things making life easier for daily users, and I think that's a pretty good idea. Now there's another one in here with the dual write kind of thing in here, and I mentioned that earlier on. What that was sort of like prospect to cash. Yeah. You start in Dynamics 365 Sales, not a finance operations apps, of which we've still got sort of 5, depending on who you ask. But you start over there in the customer engagement, in sales, in project operations, or whatever. And then we want to have the prospect. You want to have customer, hopefully, and then the sales sort of in our finance operations. And that's what dual write does for us, that it updates in both places, hence the name. And there's actually more coming around. So stay around until last minute. If this about the Dataverse and the dual write is your thing, I got a thing for you, which is not about supply chain management, but it's a cross-app update, which I know my colleague Dennis and some other people, Johannes, have been working with and looking forward to being introduced, because sometimes the dual write thing was not perfect. Now it's going to be less imperfect or better or whatever you prefer. It's going to be the end after having gone through the supply chain management things. I got a cross-app, a single cross-app thing that I'd like to share with you. And that's connected to this with the dual write. But basically, the thing about you do the work, the salespeople do the work in Dynamics 365 Sales, and it's a prospect, and now it's a customer. They want to transfer it to our finance operations so we could do the rest of the things, the picking, the packing, the shipping, and so on. And this is where this is now possible to do. So the business value is that you could use some of the tools about opportunities and the project management in sales, which is, to be honest, much better than what we have in finance and operations. We still have sales and marketing, but not much new happened there for ages, right? So a lot of the things, a lot of the clever things, smart things, the predictabilities and other things too, that happens in Dynamics 365 Sales. But we are the ones in finance operations and supply chain management who takes care of fulfilling the orders. So we need to have it. And this is where now we can have even more things from Dynamics 365 Sales. Compound charges. Well, there's more than compound charges. What is that? Well, that's a special way of sort of adding. That's kind of in the name, isn't it? It's a special way of calculating charges with a lot of flexibility on quotations in finance operations and on sales orders. Even though I just mentioned that we could do so many things in Dynamics 365 Sales, we still got quotations, right, in our finance operations. So now being added is a lot of extra possibilities with charges. And charges is a thing when we do training or when we're working on projects. there's so many things about the charges, about on the procurement side, about landed cost and other things, but also on the sales side, about customers do not want to pay order fees, or we have to calculate charges on charges, we have to calculate charges on charges with taxes and other things too. And a lot of these things can't be done easily, couldn't be done easily, I have to say, because now we've got this really excellent functionality that I'm looking so much forward to get into and document in this, because we spent so much time looking into the possibilities or lack of it when we have charges on the customer side. On the supplier side, we do a lot of modeling through that too, and we have to live with what the suppliers they do. How we calculate it then is we get it sorted out. But on the sales side and automated and so on, there's a lot of these combinations, the more complex scenarios, which has not been easy to do. So some customizations or whatever, quite often on the projects. This is coming around, as you can see, soon. And what the business value would be, then it's a lot easier to have the flexibility of charges calculations in different ways that we have right now. So you can have calculations on the orders, including charges and previously calculated charges on top of compound, kind of, right? So for a lot of our customers in this, this is a must. This has been a must. So we have to do something special, or they would have to sort of abandon the charges that are going to be added. Now there's so much more in here. And for those of you working with charges on the sales sort of side, a quotation, if you do that in finance operations, I strongly recommend you to have a closer look at this. Coming out soon. And of course, then when it's coming out soon, there's not too much documentation around it. If you get access to some previews or whatever, by all means, have a look at this. I find this highly interesting, also because it could get rid of some of the customizations that I've been part of in this area before. It's on the sales side, right? There's money to be made, and the more precisely we can calculate it, the more money we can get away with making, sort of, on that. And less customization, the better, I think. So what does it do? Now, too many details, right? Just for the last couple of days, we did something about good presentation and other things too in a class, and on that one, not more than 5 bullets or 7 at the max on a PowerPoint presentation. I keep on violating that, especially when we do the things in here, and especially on the things coming up now. Sorry. I just thought you wanted to know about this, that we have this compound surcharges. We also have some minimum surcharges. And minimum surcharges is the idea of sort of like what we do with rebates and other things that we could accumulate over time. And then if the customer didn't meet the requirements, then we say, now we have to get back to have a look into the charges that we have or haven't applied in here. So have a closer look at this. I really find this interesting, also because I've been part of customizations in this. And when I see something which could replace customization, I always find it highly interesting. Not that I don't like to make money on workshops and developer guys or whatever, but I really think standard is king, or should be king, or queen, or whatever you fancy on that. So just a quick heads up of what this could be with the compound surcharges. I used a bit of color just to make it stand out what it would be. And you can see there are some different rules in here, how you can add this, including calculate charges on charges, including taxes or whatever it would be in here. This is going to be good. I really think so. Increasing sales orders is always good. The agility, that's what I mentioned to you. And already, well, I kind of spilled the beans with this one, didn't I? I ruined what's going to be right now because I told you almost everything about that. But basically, now there's more functionality added to the sales order holds. The sales order holds has been with us for some years, and it's been really good. And a lot of things we do with sales order holds has replaced some of the other things that we could do. And now there's even more in here, automated and classes and other things in here. What's not to like in here? Once again, this adding to things that we already have, improving functionality. So we could make dependencies. We can make, okay, now we released it because of that. The credit limit was okay. Now we release it for the picking, but let's hold it because there are other things that we need to do with some certifications or some other things too. That could be done in several ways, I know, but on the sales sort of holes, I think this is a good idea. At least it's very flexible. So you're going to have the different types of sales orders depending on where they're going, depending on what they have in them, and then automatically, and that's what I like also about the current functionality, automatically remove the holes and then sort of pass them on. But the granularity in the current possibilities is not fine enough, and this is where this is a dramatic change, I think, in the functionality about the sales sort of holes. I know agility and advanced, that always makes me look away because it's too much sales push for that. But I really think that this is good. Right? Automate the things, make sure that you could release a hold and then it will still be hold in the next step or whatever kind of rules you would set up in here. So this definitely, I think, is going to do a big difference in how we are going to handle the sales sort of holes, because it could be much more automated, so we don't have to remember to do the things because the next step is automated, the next step is automated, the next step is automated based on blocking some certain documents. And if that rings a bell, it could be because you're thinking about quality orders. Remember that we could do quality orders automatically based on certain documents like packing slips or whatever it would be. Okay. Now to the last of the things that I had in inventory and logistics. We've still got a lot of things to go and not so much time, so I just need to speed up just a little bit. This small feature I was actually thinking about leaving out, but since I'm actually doing smaller and bigger features, including things that helps me in my everyday life or the user's everyday life, I decided to include this one. It's just a small one, really, but being able to search for inventory details, all kinds of inventory details, that really helps us search. You do this each and every day. Users do that each and every day on so many things. The item number, the search name, or whatever it would be. But the more the merrier. The more you can search on, it would be really great on that. So now there's a lot of functionality being added by the various things in here that you would like to search across your organizations too. So removing the need for costly and complex customizations. That was it again, right? Removing some of the customizations that we've done otherwise in here, because we wanted to enable that the customers could search for some of the things that is not out of the box functionality. Low-hanging fruit. This one is just a small one. I know. I just thought it has such a great value for the daily users. Once again. So since Microsoft is trying to reduce the complexity, the number of clicks we have to go through, making the search easier for the users would definitely have a tremendous impact on this, for sure. So the next step in here is having a look at the manufacturing. Not too many things in here, to be honest, and that is just a couple of things. Let's just see what I have chosen to have in this. Once again, increasing flexibility, agility, Microsoft boss, I know, and the two things which are in here are simple things, but flexible things. It's how you pick materials in production notes. Over picking. Would you really like that to happen? Well, it depends, I guess. And the good thing is now you could say it depends, and I decide on that. It's not the system that always says you cannot do that. There's 100 you could pick for the production order, and that's it. But I can see there's 105. Why shouldn't I pick them all? So we sort of could have another palette going in here, or so I make sure that my colleagues they have, I know them. There was football last night, so I know they're going to have more scrap than usual. So why not allow me to overpick within what has been set up by the warehouse manager or whoever. That's not going to be possible. And soon, as you might have seen from the date just bumped in on that. So the possibility in the warehouse operations, when you pick for production orders, etc., is now that you could allow your employees and people to be flexible because they know we're going to consume more raw materials. That they can see that if I just pick an extra 2%, 2 extra, or whatever it would be, then I clear the space so the refilling guys could come around and place another container, another pallet or cage or whatever it would be in here. So why not allow me just to take it all? There's just 2 left in the box, so please. So that's as simple as it is, basically, on that in here. And the warehouse manager, of course, could set up, or the product manager or whoever could set up, no, not more than that, or set up warnings or whatever it could be. Last minute changes in production is one of those agile things, I guess. Again, so many things happens on in the production last minute. There could be some raw materials that didn't occur, whatever, and we'd like the system to react perhaps automatically with this. So changes that you have done, changes on the purchase order, changes the dates. We're talking about workspaces and other things too. Getting some co-pilot warnings, and because some last minute changes they happen. Now you can have some flexibility built in on that. So in this feature, you get the possibility of very quickly changing things in here or getting information about it and tell you what can happen. So adding more margins, or you can read for yourself the possibilities. And if you want to read more, I haven't shown you all the text in here. I hardly do, but read more about in supply chain management. If production is your turf, this is interesting. Agile, adapt to changes, and so on. That's what you do in production. And that's what I did in production. And moving forward, planning. This has been big for the last release waves. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 with the planning optimization, coming in, not much in it. And then for each and every release wave, more and more and more things being added. What happens now? Not much. If you have a look at that, this is kind of it. So when you have a look at the release wave, you look for, okay, what's going to be improved in the planning optimization or in master planning? It's going to be better. And that's it. No detail. We'll see. And we'll see when. I don't know. Nothing is mentioned in here. So I'm sure it's getting better. It has been so much better since it started. It should have been. And now it's really good. What's going to happen next? It's going to be better. Procurement. It's almost the same thing, or there's a little bit of meat in here actually on that. So I really thought hard about if I was going to include this, because this is perhaps the tiniest feature of all the ones I have today. The possibility of telling the vendors when to ship. Normally we tell the vendors when we want to receive them, and then it's up to the vendor to sort things out. But maybe we could just say, we don't know how you calculate, but this is what I tell you. You ship on the 20th of November, so I can have it in time for Christmas. Just ship it on the 20th of November using Scandinavian or whoever you're going to use for the shipment. So now that's possible. And actually, this was, as you'll see in some of the release wave notes, this was from the ideas portal. So even though there's an awful bunch of opportunities from Microsoft to use some of your ideas in there, some of them actually are. And this was one of. So this very tiny thing being added to inform the vendors on the purchase order confirmation when to ship the items. Of course, we are using our normal transportation method and transport dates and other things too, and we can add calendars as well. So it's nice. It's not big. Just wanted to have something in there with this. And the same thing could be said about product information management. Now, I could have included some of the things that Andreas and I were talking about the last time around, about the global product management. It's almost here. It was the last release wave, it was public preview, but it's not out yet. So I was tempted, but I can see on the clock, it was a good thing I didn't include it. But we do have a thing in here. We got things about compliance with export control. So you don't have to, when you do things about selling, and you want to ship to Copenhagen or you want to ship to I don't know where, there might be some restrictions in what you could actually do. And depending on what you do right now, you might have some external tools to do that control. Now being added is a possibility of making sure that we could ship some of these NVIDIA chips or whatever it would be to the destinations who really want to have them, and that the system automatically will tell us you can't do that. This is in a country, a region, or these items or accommodations of whatever it would be, that this doesn't work. And this would use, of course, not just things that we have inside Dynamics 365. It needs to go look somewhere else, including our good old friend Excel spreadsheets to set up some complicated formula of what could happen during our fulfillment process of that. And that was the only thing I had in product information management. I was tempted to have the global product management back because I'm really looking forward to that one. But warehouse management is the next thing. And in this, I have chosen almost everything that was in there about the warehouse management. There'll be some automatizations of things in here with custom returns, always product receipts being a little bit easier. And then I think a really good one, rewaiving of orders. So you don't have to, if something, let's just have a look. So in this, streamlining new interfaces, automated procedures, updating documents, including that, and custom returns, and then have the inbound receiving process. Most of these ones are small, really. The last one is kind of small, and when I saw that, I thought, why didn't we have that before? It's such a low-hanging fruit. It's nice, productive too. But first things first, update documents when receiving purchase orders. That is basically, instead of you would have to click here, then doing the manual process, it's being automated when goods are coming in, and then using a warehouse app or whatever you do, instead of having to update that that the goods are actually in here with assigning a product receipt number or whatever it would be, that could now be set up to be done automatically in the system. So basically, just automating a step on that. And automating a step is not necessarily a huge thing, but if you consider how many receipts that we do, this could be kind of nice. The customer returns process is always a thing that is up for discussion. It is not necessarily the most intuitive thing that we have in Dynamics 365. Just got a warning about an unstable connection. I hope that doesn't affect the webinar sound quality, perhaps in here, but just a heads up on that. Optimizing the customer returns process, and maybe I should return my internet router. I don't know. We'll think about that. But optimizing the customer return process is now making it easier for the warehouse people who receives the goods coming back from the customers to assign our main numbers or whatever it will be. We would need to do that sooner or later. And currently, we have to do it kind of manually, or somebody would have to produce some return orders so we get it, or whatever it would be. Now it's much easier for the guys on the floor to do that, to print out some labels and other things too. So the feature I like, and I really like that the customer return process, which is something we always have a little bit of nagging about what happens in that. Everything that can be done to make it easier, I think is nice. Optimize the inbound receiving process. That was the update of things as well, printing out labels and other things, what could be done. And in this case, it would be making simpler and faster updating of when you've got multiple pallets with certain numbers of batch numbers. Could take a while, right? And now there has been some improvements in the speed. I haven't seen it, how much is actually done, but hopefully quite a lot, because this can be really slow. If you've got many items with the seller batch numbers both on a pallet with a license plate or whatever it be, it could really take a while. Another thing which I think is the most exciting of all of these, that you would automatically rewave things that didn't actually make it the first time around. And of course, there could be all sorts of reasons for things not making it the first time around. maybe you didn't do the cross docking, maybe goods were not in, it was not actually picked, nobody could find it, or whatever happened with that. So all those left behind lines you would need to handle manually prior to this one, which is coming around in December for public preview, I think it was. Now, when it failed the things that you couldn't actually pick it, or whatever happened with the things in there, now they could be picked up automatically and re-waived on that. I think that's going to do a lot of things in the warehouse. If you're having to do this, exception handling is always the one that's in use, isn't it? And with this one, there's going to be a lot of automatic low-hanging things in there, I think, at least. So, configuring this to automate, that was just about it. But I've got this one last thing in here before I'll have a look in the chat about any questions. That was the cross-app functionality, asynchronous operation in dual write functionality. And you might think, I'm a supply chain guy, what do I care about that? Maybe you don't, but I just want you to know. Anyway, because when we do this dual write thing, when we write from sales to finance operations or whatever it is, sometimes it just doesn't work. There might be some timing out and other things too. So now you could set it up for being asynchronous. So once you have the time, just like we do subledger journal batch processing or whatever we do in finance operations, the same thing could then happen between the two sides over here, from like sales of our prospects going into our supply chain management on that. Now, future, we have dual write asynchronous operation on that. I know from our development guys that this is quite exciting. So I just want to tell you. That was just about it for the topics, and I know hasting through, and the reason was that I have decided to bring more features in here, because I thought this time around there's not some really big ones that I needed to present and go into depth with. Rather, I'd like to point out that there's a lot of things in there, and maybe you just have a look at that release wave twice, because there are not much for me in here, because some things, once you think a little bit about it, is pretty useful. So I'll just shut up for now. I shut up a little bit too early. Sorry. I'll just have a look in the chat to see if there are any questions. With the help of Alison, as usual, there might be some questions from me in the chat. So let me just have a look over here. Right. So no questions. That could mean two things. I'm not sure if I got a challenge, whether it means you gave up or that I explained everything clearly. Of course, I'd like to assume the first thing. Not sure about that. But okay, you have to drop. Thank you very much as well. And I think that was almost it. Then no questions for today from the chat. So, well, this is a quote, right? And I just want to make sure that I can see Alison dropped a note about that in the chat. I just want to make sure that I remind you of that. You might not really care about finance. I do. I'm going to be backstage on September 29th at 1300 Central European Time. Hope to see you there. Thank you very much for joining today. This was Finn out of Copenhagen. Thank you so much.